Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Oriire podcast, the podcast that tells African stories. I'm Halima.
And I'm Ceci, and today we're going to talk about ethnicity. Ethnicity specifically through the lens of African history. And we're here with a special guest who is actually not that special because he's a member of the Oriire team. It's Steve. No, actually, that makes him more special. Hi, Steve.
Steven, you're not special.
Hello, Ceci. Hi, Alima. I know I'm special, even if you say I'm not.
Oh, okay. Why Steve, right? Honestly, on a normal day, his voice has more vim. I don't know why he's now like, oh, hi, Stacey.
Leave him alone. He's shy.
Shy about what? Oh, please.
Stop it.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so you guys, who wants to talk about ethnicity?
Okay, so the African concept, ethnicity is a concept that probably most of you are familiar with. Basically, it's not really about skin color or physical characteristics. Basically, it's more about tribes. So a collection of people have their own institutions, their own culture, their own pattern of behavior, etc., their own historical experience. And those people are termed as an ethnic group or a tribe. They have their own language usually as well. And Africa is made up of so many ethnic groups. So many African countries are made of so many ethnic groups. Actually, historically, there were ethnic groups before there were countries in Africa and in many other countries in Africa. For example, Nigeria. Nigeria had many different ethnic groups. We had the Benin Empire, we had the Yorubas, we had the Igbos, and everybody had their own system of kind of living, their own culture, their own system of law, even their own rulers, etc., before colonialism came and kind of amalgamated Nigeria, as they say. So, Steve, what do you have to tell us today about ethnicity?
Okay, so for me, ethnicity is beyond individual ethnicity. Like when you talk about ethnicity, you're looking at the collective identity of a people, right? What forms the collective identity of a people? That is what ethnicity is. That myth of origin that they rally around, that culture, that belief system that forms their very essence. That's what ethnicity is. And as far as Africa is concerned, the entire history of Africa is always couched around ethnicity or along ethnic lines. So yeah, basically to me, that's what ethnicity is. And ethnicity is both beautiful, right? It is as beautiful as it is detrimental. It's like two sides of the same coin, depending on which angle you're looking at it from. So hopefully we'll be able to discuss that before this episode runs out. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on that, like most things, ethnicity has both like its positives and its negatives. And some of the negatives that ethnicity has had on the African continent are like a lot of the civil wars we've had. So there's the Rwandan genocide that happened. When did it even happen again? Between April and July of 1994. So that was very horrible. And then there's the Nigerian Civil War, the Biafran War, where the Yorubas and basically the West were fighting with the East. That's like the Igbo people.
Yes, and we're going to get more into those ethnic conflicts in a bit, but let's go over ethnicity a little bit more and talk about how kind of Africans have viewed the concept and understood the concept. I feel like if you ask some Africans today, for example, I can only speak from the perspective of Nigeria because I'm Nigerian. If you ask some Nigerians, like if you ask them, what are you or where are you from? Some people will probably tell you, I'm Yoruba, I'm Igbo, I'm Hausa, before they tell you I'm Nigerian. So it goes to show that, ethnicity is not a thing that you can't really think about it as strictly historical because it's still very present in today's life. And people still very strongly identify with their ethnic group before they identify with their country. Do you agree with this, Steve?
Yes, definitely. I agree with you. Africans are historically ethnic people. We have always been divided along ethnic lines. And so the African countries as we have them today, or the African communities as we have them today, those are not the natural formations. So it is normal for us to say that I'm a Yoruba person, I'm an Igbo person, I'm an Hausa person. I agree with that. But then it's not totally the fault of Africans. Let's just like go back a little bit. Now, when Africans were evolving, they evolved within small ethnic groups with systems, complex systems, advanced systems in some places, even for systems of their political system, their economic system, their social system existed solely on its own before the European incursion. Now, what the European incursion did specifically to Africans was that it caused a merger of different cultures together that otherwise would have not related in the same way that they related. Now, many times when we are talking about African history or the influence of ethnicity on African history, we are looking at how these people were different people and then they brought them together without considering their differences. Yes, but as well, they always related with one another. Even before the Europeans came, Africans always related with one another. But it was not on the same basis with which they now began to relate with one another. They traded with one another, they intermarried with one another. But they were not forced to live within the same environment and then share resources from the center. Each ethnic group was relating with one another. But then for the Europeans to entrench their governance in Africa, they had to break these countries, bring them together, then they had to employ divide and rule. Because when you cause some sort of strife between the people, it's very easy to rule them. And so that division, it's actually paradoxical, right? You divided them by uniting them, so to speak. And so that's why scholars have evolved two theories when it comes to division of when it comes to intergroup relations. There's the theory of strange bedfellows, and then there's the theory of unity in diversity. So for some, I've believed that we are all strange bedfellows. We don't know each other. They just brought us together, so we are strangers to one another. And that's why we have this problem. However, some believe that there is unity in diversity. And as such, because they have brought us together, and these are spanned over decades, the cultures have become so meshed, so interwoven that it is becoming difficult to separate them. And so we have found that unique purpose in our diversity. So yeah, that's my thoughts actually.
Thank you, Steve. That's actually really interesting. And I've kind of thought about this quite a bit as well. And I see both perspectives of this, because yes, if you kind of force groups together who don't have anything in common, of course, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be quite a lot of like back and forth and a lot of battles, because these are people who already had their own identity. They had their own, way of life, really. And they were forced together, forced to merge, and kind of forced to become, basically, they took their heterogeneity away and tried to force them to become one amorphous blob, which is not realistic. But then I can also kind of see the other perspective where you say, unity in diversity, because while, for example, Nigeria is very divided across ethnic lines, and a lot of people identify with their tribe first before they identify with their country. From that also, we kind of have developed a unique Nigerian identity as well. So I feel like there is something like a Nigerian identity now where they may not have been 50 years ago. There's kind of a Nigerian, I want to say we're kind of developing a Nigerian culture. So yes, there's Yoruba culture, there's Hausa culture, Igbo culture, Igala culture, Efik culture, etc. But I feel like there is a Nigerian culture that you can now kind of see coming after how many years of us being amalgamated, which is that if you see another Nigerian, abroad, for example, you guys can identify that each other is Nigerian. You guys have some things in common. You guys know the typical Nigerian food we eat at parties. You know the Nigerian music. We have that in common now. You know the you just you know the Nigerian food. And I always say that some of the best exports from Nigeria are like the food, the people, and the music. And I think those are the things that have kind of been the basis
people?
of forming the people. The people.
Nigerians are great exports. Are you sure?
Yes, I'm not going to say every single
Okay.
Nigerian is a great export too. But I'm telling you that today, if you take a Nigerian and you put them in Antarctica and you give them 1 year and come back, they will be fine. They will be thriving.
It depends. Oh, please, nobody should put me there. I'm not about that life.
I kind of understand that, but then I feel like yes, Nigerians have kind of evolved.
Nigerians are resilient
and survive anyway. We are very resilient. We are, and the thing about our resilience is that we're the kind of people,
I'm really not. I'm a different breed of Nigerian. I'm not resilient. Please, I'm all for the soft life. Okay.
No. That's not different from soft life, though. That we can still have soft life, but yes, I think that Nigerian people are a good export. If you even think about the big names in anything, when you're thinking about like now cinema, you're thinking about music, you're thinking about Nigerians are there. We are there, and that's because Nigerian people, we know how to adapt. We know how to how to move. Yeah, I think that there's just something, I don't want to say it's unique to Nigerians, but like as a Nigerian, this is the only perspective I can speak from. And I think that yes, Nigerian people are a good export. I still think the music right now is the best export from Nigeria. But yes, I think that from those many cultures that were forced to come together and kind of stripped of their identity, even though lots of people still retain parts of that, has formed something of a new identity, something that is uniquely Nigerian as well. So that's why I said I can see both perspectives. So yes, strange bedfellows in that there's still lots of division, there's still lots of differences. Lots of things are divided across ethnic lines today. And yet at the same time, I can kind of see what's new coming from that as well. I don't know if you guys get me.
I get you, madam.
Did you hear me? I said we get you, madam. But yeah.
Yes, let me talk about that a bit. So Africans discovered that many of our challenges have been ethnocentric, so to speak. And so shortly after independence, Africans have they have tried to respond. If you look at many of the political philosophies of pre and post-independent Africa, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and the likes, Felix Houphouët-Boigny, Obasanjo Awolowo, they have always worked towards unifying towards a united Africa. Hence the creation of the Organization of African Unity. That, guys, for so long we have dwelt on that thesis that Africa's underdevelopment or retrogression, so to speak, was because of external incursion. Okay, that has happened. So how do we move forward? So the aim has always been towards, one of the first things that Africans decided to do was let's just create an African identity, an Africa that we can all rally around. Hence the creation of the old Pan-Africanist movements. And so the Organization of African Unity was created so that we can, like Kwame Nkrumah envisioned, that maybe one day we can have a United States of Africa, where all of us are just united with one currency, one government, free movement and all that. Sadly, it hasn't worked the way he envisioned it. And then in the individual African countries, right, they also tried to move away from the whole tribalization of governance and political parties, because if you agree with me, that's one of the major challenge, right? It is not that because we have ethnic groups and so these challenges are coming. These challenges come up because our leaders have politicized the ethnicity, the multi-ethnicity of Africa or of African countries. So to move away from that point of view, in Ghana, for instance, Kwame Nkrumah was able to outlaw parties that were organized on tribal or ethnic basis. Let's just have political parties, but not divided along ethnic lines. In Cote d'Ivoire, for instance, Ufu Boigny also did the same thing. He started employing people into ministerial posts and civil service jobs and social services. All the appointments that would have been political, he made sure that they were coming from different tribes of Ivory Coast and not just from the same, and not just from maybe one particular tribe. And then I think in Tanzania too, Julius Nyerere was also able to, create that union, African National Union Party, where the focus was not just on one tribe, but on the united and Tanzanian district. So there are different attempts by African leaders in different countries to move out of this whole ethnic divide and let's just enjoy the beauty of our diversity. So yeah, we've been trying, but we've not been very successful. But I believe that one day there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Do you genuinely believe that it's kind of possible for, at least, let's say, to significantly reduce the division along ethnic lines within African countries? Do you really think that? Because I personally, I don't know. I don't know if like it will ever be united, or like there will ever be united countries completely, or even mostly. I don't know.
I think at some point, or maybe this is just me being optimistic, and I feel like because these days there's a lot of like intermarriages between Africans with globalization and whatnot, right? People are meeting new people you will not necessarily meet on a normal day and stuff. So people are like talking to people from various parts of the continent, and people are getting married, people are like having intimate relationships and stuff like that. So I think at some point, right, we'll be able to move beyond like, oh, where are you from, what tribe are you, blah blah blah. I feel like religion will definitely still be an issue, but then we should, and I feel like we will be able to move past like tribes and ethnic groups and whatnot. What do you think, Stephen?
Okay. Well, we're talking about like whether we think ethnicity or like division along ethnic lines really is ever going to be a thing of the past, or mostly a thing of the past, even though not entirely. And Halima has said her perspective that she thinks because of the rate of intertribal marriages, marriages between different tribes, marriages between different countries, she thinks that
relations,
soon, yes. And my perspective is I'm not so sure. As much as I would like to believe that, when you think about like the way some governments are formed, for example, in Nigeria, we have a more decentralized government. We do have like a central federal government, but it's decentralized. And like within those states, for example, the government will only employ people who are from those states, indigenous. And in every single form you feel in Nigeria, they ask you for your state of origin, which means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It means nothing. Like, what does that mean? Anyway, what's your perspective?
For me, I think that there would always be multiple ethnic groups, right? There will always be different ethnic groups, but then it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to be divided along ethnic lines. We can be a united front even with the different ethnic groups. And the reason why I think, because many people have been advocating for division. I know we've been using Nigeria a lot, so let me just use Nigeria. When people advocate for division of Nigeria into like 3 parts, let the Hausas go, let the Igbos go, let the Yorubas go, and all that. That kind of division is what I don't subscribe to, because it is literally and practically impossible. Because for over 60 years, what am I saying? Since the scramble for Africa, these groups have coexisted with one another. If you were talking about dividing Nigeria along ethnic lines, maybe shortly after independence, perhaps it may still be possible. But for now, with some of the things you've said, people have intermarried, people transact businesses with one another. The groups are so interwoven that it is going to be very tedious and practically impossible to start separating it. And then when you begin separation, the separation will definitely continue. Because when you separate Biafra, for instance, and then you separate the Yoruba nation, and then you separate the Hausas, then in between those three groups that you have separated to, there are micro ethnic groups there. And after a while, the same set of ethnic groups would want to also divide themselves, because the same issues that you had when Nigeria was a whole will come up in those small groups. Then you keep on breaking. And then I don't know how long you're going to keep breaking. So for me, a divided Nigeria is not as strong as a united Nigeria. It is of no use to anybody to divide along that movie. But we can always work towards working with our differences, working with the differences we have, accommodate each other, and find something that unifies us, which we already even have. Like you mentioned, there's the old music and food and intermarriage and businesses. Let's just find the beauty in diversity.
Okay, so as we've discussed on this episode, there are thousands of ethnic groups and tribes on the African continent. And yeah, there are lots of ethnic conflicts basically, and these conflicts are going to be discussed in subsequent episodes.
So stay
tuned
guys,
for that. Yeah. And then we're just going to wrap this episode up. So I feel like an assignment, we're going to give you an assignment. Try to talk to someone outside your ethnic group today. If you're African, try to talk to someone or like I do that all the time because I'm an African expert. So I do that all the time. But yeah, so try to talk to someone, be open-minded, and yeah, just learn more about an ethnic group that's not yours. And don't forget to like, comment, stay notified, subscribe, and all of that. Ceci, do you have anything to add?
I just want to say thanks for listening, and thank you, Steve, for coming on this episode with us and discussing this topic. We hope to see you again on future episodes. Thanks for listening, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends. To stay updated, you can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, we are Oriire_Africa. On TikTok, we are Oriire Africa. And on YouTube, we are Oriire. Oriire is spelled ORIIRE.
You can also find us on our website, which is oriire.com, where we have articles about African mythology, history, and food. Contact us via our website or social media if you'd like to come on the podcast. We'd definitely love to have you. If you want to support us, you can do so by subscribing to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/OriireAfrica. And all of this will be listed in our description box below. Thank you.
Thank you.